Hi guys, it's Dr. Bradley. Today we're going to talk about hamstrings, particularly tight hamstrings. We're going to talk about what tight hamstrings do to our posture. We're going to talk about how to assess whether you have tight hamstrings, and then we're going to finally talk about how to properly stretch them. We're also going to talk about something called lumbopelvic rhythm, which is something that will get affected by tight hamstrings, and then we'll show you how to lift properly once you've stretched your hamstrings and you can move. We're talking about lifting light loads and heavy loads. So the hamstring muscle obviously is in the back of the leg. We're going to pan down here. The hamstrings attach behind the knee and they attach right to the bottom of the pelvis. It's called the ischial tuberosity. When the hamstrings are tight, the muscle shortens and it pulls us into a posterior pelvic tilt. And if you are in a posterior pelvic tilt, it's going to give you different postural problems. It may be a sway back posture, it may be a flat back posture. But in any event, when that is a tight muscle and a person goes to bend forward, they cannot anteriorly tilt their pelvis. And when you can't anteriorly tilt your pelvis, you just end up over flexing your back. So somebody who has tight hamstrings, when they go to touch their toes, they just bend their back and they can't make their pelvis move. So we're going to show you a picture right now of a person who has tight hamstrings, and to make up for the tight hamstrings, when they're bending forward to touch their toes, their low back muscles are excessively flexing. When this happens to a patient or a person, they are typically going to hurt their low back when they perform a lifting exercise, or they just bend to lift something even light that can injure their back because of that excessive motion in the low back. Now we're going to pan to a second image, and in this picture they are tight in the hamstrings, they're also tight in the low back muscles, and now they have to excessively bend through the thoracic spine to make up for that motion. You can also get injuries through the thoracolumbar spine and through the mid-thoracic into the upper thoracic spine with this kind of a problem. So now what we're going to do is we're going to show you ways to effectively stretch tight hamstrings and correct some of these postural problems. Okay, so when I am evaluating a patient in my office, I will have them sit on a table or on the ground, and I'll say, just touch your toes for me. And this is what a lot of people will do who are having back problems when they have tight hamstrings. So when they go to touch their toes, they round their back and they try to go this way. So the hamstrings are so tight that they're pulling the pelvis under them and that back is rounding. And this is what we want to fix. Okay? So what I'll have a patient do is I'll say, first of all, take a small pillow, slide your back so it's all the way up against the wall. Put a little bit of a pillow or a rolled up towel behind your back. So now we're getting a little bit of a lordosis or curvature placed into the lumbar spine. And now I have them just try and straighten their legs out. And if somebody's really tight in the hamstrings, they're going to feel stretched just by doing this. All right? When somebody has really tight hamstrings and they try this, if they're really tight, what will happen is their butt will start to slide away from the wall. Okay, so you have to really make sure that that butt or pelvis stays close to the wall as you can get it. Get that back straight, and then drop the knees to get that stretch into the hamstrings. If you're really tight and this is a stretch for you, then just hold that for about 15 seconds. Let those hamstrings feel the stretch, and then afterwards, give yourself a break, bend them, relax for a few minutes, or not a few minutes, for about 10-15 seconds. And then you want to straighten them out again. Hold that again for about a 10 to 15 second count. Make sure that you're breathing. This can be intense, and if it's really intense, sometimes people have a tendency to hold their breath. Try and relax into this. Make sure you're breathing. If you do this consistently for a few weeks, you will start to loosen up in the hamstrings. And once you can do this comfortably, then you can proceed to now start stretching forward at the pelvis and touching the toes in a natural way. All right, now we're going to show you another exercise called the waiter's bow. Okay, so now we're going to show you an exercise or a stretch. It's a mobilization stretch called a waiter's bow. What we do when we do the waiter's bow is we turn sideways. I'm just turning sideways so we can see this. You want to bend the knees slightly. You want to bend forward at the waist, and you want to maintain that arch in your spine. So they take this exercise and they call it a waiter's bow because a waiter, a formal waiter, would bend forward with the menu and show it to you. That's where that name comes from. But anyway, you want to bend the knees, get into this forward position, have a nice arch in your spine, and then you want to hold that position as you straighten your knees out. And if you do that properly, you will feel the stretch in your hamstring. You want to hold that for 10 seconds, 10 to 15 seconds, and then you want to give yourself a break. All right? And then you want to do it again. I would repeat this exercise 5 to 10 times for a 10-second hold each time. And what that will do is it will force the stretch to occur in the hamstring while your low back muscles are in a contracted position, maintaining that curvature. So remember, when somebody has tight hamstrings, these muscles are really flexible, they're over flexible, and they're weak. This exercise is going to force the lumbar spine or the low back muscles to contract and tighten and force the hamstrings to stretch while those muscles are being contracted. So it's a great exercise for correcting this improper flexibility of the hamstrings and the low back. It's also called a lumbo-pelvic rhythm. So now let's talk about practical applications and how this plays over into lifting and why when people have tight hamstrings and they are doing a lot of lifting or bending, they're injuring their spines. So once you've corrected the problem and you've got proper flexibility in your hamstrings, if you're going to pick up light things, say anything that's 10 pounds or lighter, you want to have a natural bend in the spine. You don't want to always maintain that lordosis or that curve. So if I'm picking up something light, I want to just bend forward, pick it up, and come up. Okay, so you can see I had a little bend in my spine. I let my hamstrings stretch. I let the ligaments in my spine stretch. If you're picking up light things, that's the way you want to do it. That type of movement pattern is going to not only strengthen your muscles properly, but it's also going to strengthen up what's called the ligamentous system. It's going to strengthen the ligaments in your low back. Now, if you're lifting a heavy load, and light and heavy loads are different for each individual, but if it's a load where you really know it's going to take a strain to lift, so for some people maybe that's anything over 10 pounds, maybe it could be 20 pounds, everybody has a different threshold. But let's just say for the sake of argument that it's something that you know is heavy and that you know if you lifted it, you might hurt your back. If you're going to lift a heavy load, you want to maintain that curvature in your spine. So it can apply to a deadlift or picking up a 50-pound box or whatever. But when you pick up something heavy, you want to bend those legs and you want to maintain that curvature, that arch in your spine. You want to pick your load up and lift, as they say, with your legs. So hopefully that helps you have a better understanding of what hamstrings can do to your posture and how they can affect your posture and how they can lead to injury. But also now you have information on how to correct the problem and lift properly so that you don't have injury and you can stay healthy and happy. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I'm Dr. Bradley.